Hello and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns Market Report for today, Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. My name is Tom Luongo, and we have a lot to talk about. So again, a couple of pieces of housekeeping, just to remind everybody, if you're new or if you are interested, I will be speaking at the Mises Supporter Summit in Hilton Head, South Carolina on the weekend of the October 10th through the 12th. I'll be there for the entire conference, so it would be great to meet up with y'all if you want to go to that. I'll be giving the keynote speech on Saturday night, and we'll be there. So I'll be there along with Camille for the entire conference. I do believe Dexter's going as well. So we can make it a slightly informal GG&G style event on the sidelines of it. It would be kind of fun. So there's that, and there's be a link to that in the show notes for this market report this morning, along with the promo code to save you a few dollars. I think that's it. Other than that, I don't have no struggle sessions this morning, guys. Let's just get started. How's that for those of you in the audience? All right, so let's talk about what's going on with Macron in France and his arrest of Pavel Durov, the CEO of Telegram. The UAE came out yesterday and dressed France down hard, since Durov apparently also has UAE citizenship, and demands his release, which is phenomenal, and that they, according to Joaquin Flores, have canceled an 80 unit order for French Rafale fighter. I think it's French Rafale fighters. So this is a big deal. The UAE is one of the biggest buyers of French military industrial complex equipment, and this is something that Macron was put in charge of France to do, and to remain in charge of France to do, which was to wean Europe off of the U.S. and bring them back towards and build their own military industrial complex up from within, which is fine. That's what they want to do. Then if they want to go ahead and torment Russia for the next 40 years, they're more than welcome to do so. Just, I'm not paying for it anymore. That's for all the Europeans in the audience to decide whether or not that they're going to pay for that or not. Or, I know you don't have any actual choice in the matter. You live in Europe. You have slightly less choice than we have here in the United States. So, but what's more interesting than that is it's clearly Macron is under extreme pressure here, and he's become a very pivotal and an important figure in how they're attempting to stay, Davos that is, attempting to stay in power and on course, right? The Gantt project over at Evil Corp Central constantly needs to be course corrected, and Macron staying in power in France is, that's one of those things. So it's one of those pillars of it, and it's also, obviously a clear warning shot across the bow to Elon Musk and, Chris Pavelski of Rumble and everyone else, that if you don't do what we tell you to do, then you're going to be arrested as well. Now, I'm going to bracket some comments on this. The first things I want to say is, let's just start with the beginning. There's a lot to say, and I'm not sure that I should lead. The reason I'm waffling here is I'm not sure I should lead with this, but this is the first thing that popped into my head because it's the last thing I interacted with, which is that, I love Mike Benz. I think Mike Benz is great. I really do. In general, his commentary is spot on, and that's where that terrible but comes in. But there's a little too much, the USIC blob does everything. The USIC blob is the problem. The USIC blob is the problem. And I just don't buy any narrative that's that single-minded anymore. To say that the EU is, a complete vassal state to the US at this point is ludicrous. It's not. It's an independent actor. Is there U.S. influence over European policy? Of course there is. Is there EU influence over American policy. Yes, I don't like this. I don't like this image of Europe as being some kind of vassal state, and because I think it's bullshit. I clearly think it's bullshit. I also think that the UK being a vassal state of the United States is bullshit as well. I think all of these factions, all of these blocks, the United States, the EU, the UK, are all being torn apart at the seams by each other. This is a shark tank, or this is a piranha tank, okay? That's what's going on here. And sometimes, they agree and they all gang up on the one guy, and then they, like, it all depends on what issue we're talking about at the time. So I prefer co-conspirator to vassal state. France knows exactly what they were doing, okay? Macron knows exactly what he's doing. It's the reason why he's refusing to give up power. It's why he's refusing to well, quote unquote, throw France into some kind of political crisis. It's bullshit. And so the idea that Mike Benz is putting out there that the Pavel Durov arrest was all the IC blob in the United States trying to get control of Telegram for their own, to continue to have full control over it, while is compelling and I'm sure is a major factor in all of this. Like, don't kid yourself for a second that Macron isn't also trying to send an EU-centric message to everyone else that thinks that they're going to defy, the EU and their Digital Services Act after Elon Musk told Thierry Brayton to go fuck himself over the Donald Trump spaces. Like, if you don't think that these things are all related to each other, you can't just separate one out versus the other because it comports to your narrative. And at the end of the day, then everybody just wants to simplify it. And just, not everybody, but then a lot of people just want to simplify it. So I go, well, dude, it's all the Jews. I'm like, no, it's really not. It's a factor. The USIC blob is a big deal. The military-industrial complex striking back is a big deal. They're all part of these things. The banking class, the this, the that. Everybody's blackmailing each other. Everybody's extorting each other. That's what you do with this level of power. Okay? Somebody texted me this morning and said they said, geopolitics is so much easier once you start thinking like an inbred oligarch. I'm like, yeah. Power-hungry oligarch. I'm like, yeah. It's not that tough, actually. You've got kind of the cheat code to how this stuff works, and everything else doesn't really freaking matter. So, Macron is in a very, very difficult position because, he can't go backwards. He can't step backwards. He can't do the right thing, save himself. He's like Zelensky at this point. He's trapped. Okay? These people are trapped. They're trapped by their circumstance. They don't know how to get out of it. They may have walked into it complicitly, but now that the worm is turned against them, like, they're going to be used up and spat out and destroyed. That's the nature of how this stuff works. And if this is too complicated for you to understand, then I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. So I'm not saying that at some point I'm going to have sympathy for Emmanuel Macron or Zelensky or any of these other people. I'm just trying to get you to understand that, or just trying to say, and I think many of you understand. I think many of you understand this. So maybe I'm not being wholly fair here, but we're trying to put a nuanced take on this. Like, I think most people here get it, if not almost all of us. It's that these people are just pawns. And they're going to be used, and they're lieutenants, and they're not worthy. They're almost even not worthy of our opprobrium at a personal level. Same thing with Javier Milei or any of these other freaking people. Like, they don't matter because they're the distraction. That's bait, that is, to quote Mad Max from Fury Road. It's chum. They chum the waters with these people. They make them do terrible things. And then we get angry with them and let, and the people who actually gave the orders go away scot-free. And so from that perspective, Mike Benz's arguments about the IC blob are incredibly important mechanistically, meaning he's helping you to see who's actually giving the orders, or one of the factions that's giving the orders. But it's not the only faction giving the order, which is where my criticism comes in. It's the same problem I have with Whitney Webb. It's the same problem I have with other people. There is no single factor here. Dexter and I go back and forth on this and about, how organized all this is. He doesn't see any real level of organization. I see more of it. And that he does. And that's where we disagree. And that disagreement is healthy because it error checks both of us, because sometimes he's wrong and sometimes I'm wrong, and it happens. Right. It's all just part of the whole continuous improvement cycle. And so that's all I'm trying to do here. It's not to dress any members of the community down or anything like that. This is purely, but it doesn't always come across this way because, dudes, I'm a dick. I get it. I come across as a dick. I get it. Like, fully self-aware of, what my tone sounds like. Like, you don't think I've lived in this body for 56 years and had the, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? It's because I'm a dick. Okay. So this is where Macron is at this moment in time. And I didn't really mean for all three talking points this morning to be European centric, but we're kind of there, right? Because now we're nearly at the point where we're going to have the elections I think it's this weekend, right? That for Thuringia, Saxony, and Brandenburg. And we should be in the blackout phase in German polling. Maybe the last polls are coming out today or whatever. That were taken 5 days ago. There's always a blackout period in a lot of these, a lot of the European nations on polling. So I can never remember which ones are which. I think Germany has a 5 or 7 day blackout period. You can leave comments down below if you remember more than I do. But what's important here is that we're at a point where AFD has a real shot at being there being no other option that allow them to come into power. Okay. Now, the German political establishment will do everything, and I mean every fucking thing you can think of, to stop that from happening. The same way that Emmanuel Macron is using every, procedural trick in the book to deny the voters, just same way that they're setting up in the United States for the exact same thing. Now we have, Lawrence McDonald out there. I saw this morning of saying that the Supreme Court is a political organization and we shouldn't listen to what they have to say. And they're setting all these narratives up for that moment where they just say, well, we don't like the outcome of the election. It's wrong, and we're not going to abide by it. At which point everybody will have a choice. And they're going to put that choice in front of people who own 800 million guns. And if you don't think they know exactly what the outcome of that will be or what they're hoping for will be, I got news for you. Like, they created a insurrection on January 6th, 2021 out of whole cloth. You don't think they can't create a false flag around the election results? You don't think Kamala Harris is going to try and claim victory even if she lost? Like, they're going to do everything imaginable to ensure that this doesn't go off. This goes off badly. And the same thing's going to happen to Germany. And I guess the big question is the insurgent splinter group from Die Linke from the left. I can never remember her name. I think it's Wallenberg or Wallencraft. Wallenknecht. Yeah, Wallenknecht. And she's polling around anywhere from 9 to 15%, depending on the region. And the big question is, are we going to see a unity movement between these people and AFD to get rid of the people that are in power who are clearly working against Germany's best interests? Are we going to see a Trump RFK moment in Germany? I don't know. I'm not laying odds here. I'm just asking a question. And I don't mean that as a leading question to, I think X, Y, and Z. I don't know. I don't have a good feel for this. I've had, a couple of Germans reach out to me and try and help me through this. But I get the sense that they don't really have a sense of that more than anything else. My friend Peter Spengler is more focused on getting the Greens out of the Bundesrat in these states than he is getting the AfD into those state governments. Okay. And I think he's correct in that that's kind of the order of operations, or that's the best you can hope for given the current circumstances, but that being said, Peter may just be cynical because he's watched German politics for as long as he has. I don't know. Okay, just attenuate all of this commentary to taste, but I think it's all very important to at least talk through this stuff so that when we get to the results next week, we can sit down and go, well, that's interesting, right? And we have something to build off of. So these are ideas I'm just trying to put into your heads now for us to discuss later, or at least what I'm thinking about. And let you know what is going on, right? This what these market reports are. At least the first half of this is all just brain dumping. So, but in Saxony in particular, the latest polls I saw had AfD at 34%, 4 points above the CDU, and everybody else other than Wagenknecht below 5%, for all intents and purposes, 7%. Like half of the smaller parties, including the Greens, won't cross the 5% threshold. Die Linke, AfD, the Three Democrats, like none of these people, and the SPD is I think polling at maybe 8%. Like they're useless as well. So the natural thing to happen under normal circumstances in Saxony would be an AfD-led coalition with the CDU. We have a center-right government come to power, led by AfD, and that's that. But we don't live in normal times. We live in the most abnormal times we've ever lived in. So we shouldn't expect that outcome. We should expect something, completely different. But if we do get that outcome, then what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that Merkelism, that Angela Merkel, that the ghost of Angela Merkel effect on all the political parties and the political process in Germany has faded away, or has faded beyond the point of it mattering. And if that's the case, we could see some very interesting results in Germany. Not this weekend per se, because I think the polling is probably going to come out. I think the election results are probably going to come in close to in line with the polling, but it's the wrangling and the machinations after that in trying to form governments in those states that would be interesting. I don't believe for a moment that if Saxony votes the vote totals come out the way we expect in Saxony, that they'll be allowed to form a coalition, form a government without a second vote. They'll just keep saying no, you're not allowed to do this, and then they'll start trying to jail members of the AfD. They'll create false flags against them. They'll plant kiddie porn on their hard drives, the whole 9 yards. Right? That's the more likely outcome. So, the last thing to talk about this morning, and I have another podcast coming out today with Alex Craner, and then I'm actually interviewing Marty Bent. It's going to be on my show this afternoon. We're going to do that. I'm trying to get a bunch of podcasts out the door at this point, and so I'm broadening the scope a little bit, and we're doing a variety of different new guests and whatnot. So, but I spoke to Alex yesterday after listening to him on Vanessa Beeley's show and how he went through the timeline of events in July and August surrounding Ukraine and the UK. And Alex makes a very, very compelling point about what's going on here. And I'll have the podcast out probably this afternoon. If not this afternoon, then tomorrow morning. And I might put it out this afternoon. But I think it's important because there's some insights that occur during that podcast. And I'll give you a preview of it. Alex's arguments about the UK being insolvent thanks to Ukraine in very broad terms. And again, I'm going to ask you to go and listen to that podcast, because we go for an hour and 20 minutes. The big insight that I have at that during the thing is to say, oh, now I know why the Bank of England has been buying the crap out of U.S. Treasury bonds. Like now I understand why all these things have been occurring. All this stuff about yield curve control and the capping of bond yields and forcing Powell to pivot and everything else, it all has to do with the insolvency of the Bank of England. More so than the ECB. But the ECB is on the hook as well. They're all on the hook. And they're all on the clock. So I've got an update on my UK gilt credit spread chart that I put up a few months ago. If you guys remember that one, we're gonna talk about that more in just a minute. So this is a big deal. And I think it actually helps us really kind of slot the final piece of the puzzle into place about what's going on with bond yields and what their plans are and why things are happening the way they're happening. And again, I won't do Alex justice here in any way, manner, shape, or form, trying to go through the totality of the argument that he put together. But it's definitely an Inspector Finch moment from V for Vendetta, where he like sees the whole thing in front of him and then just lays it all out. And he doesn't, like Finch, wimp out and go, I don't know, it was just a feeling. So with that said, let's get the charts, like a out of here. Gold. Yeah. Someone's ass is starting to itch a little bit with gold above $2,500. That's clearly what's going on here. We're getting a rollover here. No one wants gold to break significantly beyond $2,500. And so for 3 weeks now, for just about 2 weeks total, we've had gold sitting here right around the $2,500 mark and not being allowed to move. And when you see volatility drop off as quickly, you have a breakout like this and then this. This is clearly the sign of somebody trying to hold things in place. And when you see low volatility as quickly, and when you see the volatility drop off this quickly, you're also seeing the fact that there are very strong hands in the market who refuse to be moved. And so this is, I'm going to make this abundantly clear. This is a titanic battle right here. Now, do the bulls have infinite money? Depends on who's on the other side of the trade. If it's the Chinese, as Eric Jung was postulating the other day, they have a printing press. So does so do the bad guys. Like everybody's got a printing press. What are they going to do? I don't know. The longer they hold gold in place here, while everything else breaks down. Of course, we have Nvidia's earnings later in the day, and God knows if that's going to like throw the markets into a tizzy, blah, 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 blah. But the longer gold stays here, the harder it's going to be for it to break out under these circumstances. If the circumstances weren't like they are right now, I would normally say, oh, this is great. We're consolidating in this range. We're taking in, we're stair-stepping higher. Normally, under normal circumstances, this is anything other than gold. This is what I would say. If this was somebody's stock and they're like, oh, this is what I think is going on here. Let's watch to see if this, holds, let's see if it holds here. It's, market's getting used to this new price regime. It's going to test the breakout level a little bit. 3 or 4 weeks of this, and then boom, we're going to stair step higher because the fundamentals are strong. This is gold. So I'm telling you that the longer they try to, the longer they do this, the more likely it is that a lot of bulls will capitulate. People will start getting margin calls and they'll start selling their longs, liquidating their longs in order to raise or to raise cash. But it will be fewer and fewer and fewer of them over time, as they also drain the physical vaults, because the premium between the cash price and the futures price of gold remains $30. It's been this way for weeks now. So it's a lot of money that that premium should not be $30. It should be $3. But at the same time, had a nice rally in silver, so we should expect a bit of a pullback. But everything is kind of being sat on here. The Dow is not moving. Silver's not really moving. Now, this week, gold's not moving. Everybody is on pins and needles about something, is the general gist that I'm getting here. And again, bond yields aren't moving. The silver futures curve is completely uninteresting. Are we just going to hold the markets in amber until the Fed's rate decision in 2 weeks? Really? Okay. Or 3 weeks? Okay, Boomer, this is what we're going to do. So, again, don't get me wrong. Silver broke the previous high like it's supposed to. That's fine. As long as we don't break the previous low this week. We're not getting an engulfing signal where there's, increasing volatility and, people having to scramble around to reposition. If it's just a normal kind of, we had a nice big run in silver from below 27 up to, 30, some profit takings on the table. And if that's all it is, that's fine. But at this moment in time, you can never, just simplify things like that. You always got to worry about something else. Okay. Speaking of worrying, every day someone else comes in to try and bomb and control the Bitcoin market. And again, this is not what the U.S. banking system wants. This is not what a lot of prominent U.S. Political forces want. This is what Davos wants. Okay, Davos wants Bitcoin controlled. They want to hold the price in this range. They want to suck all the coins up as they can. They're not getting the uptake rate that they want. Bitcoin is, this is where I appreciate tactically and strategically the Bitcoin maxis. I always, I get on their case all the time about being, religious fundamentalists. But hey, man, everybody who's hodling, and oh, by the way, I'm hodling, if not accumulating. Every time something like this happens, I go out and I take a little money and I go buy a little bit more Bitcoin, and I done, right? But Binance, I think, went ahead and seized a bunch of people's accounts, or right. So Binance did something really shitty this morning, and Bitcoin was back below 60,000 again. And then by the time I hit record, it was back above 60, and it's all just so, I hate to use the term again, but I'm going to do it. It's all so fake and gay. But it's who these people are. They can't help themselves. Again, think like an inbred, power-hungry oligarch, and, Bob's your uncle. That's the way these charts read to me anymore. I hate to say it, but, it's just funny. But at the same time, maybe I'm trying not to do the Mike Benz thing, or the same thing that I'm complaining about Whitney Webb and Mike Benz and others. I have to check myself that I'm not doing the same damn thing. But we have clear correlation of Evil Corp selling, or a government selling a whole bunch of Bitcoin for no fucking reason, into a market to suppress the price. Bong, 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 over and over again. You're like, okay. And then the market gets bid back up again. Well, why don't you stop doing that and sell into strength like a normal person? Do you not like making money to fund Evil Corp Central's operations? Did you not get the memo the first 3 or 4 fucking times? These people aren't going to sell. They don't care. You're not going to break their spirit. They don't care. You're just not. And no matter how much you try to amplify Peter Schiff, it's not going to work. Because that's what happens. Invariably, the minute they start going on a Bitcoin dumping spree, Peter Schiff starts showing up in my YouTube feed. I'm like, really? I see you. It's not that tough. The Google algorithm knows that I get I get restless every year, every 6 months to a year, and I start looking at cars again. So they start sending me new, car videos on a regular basis. I haven't looked at certain, drumming stuff or whatever. They start sending that stuff to me, even if my interests have moved on. They're like, oh, by the way, you used to like this, and they just wait a certain number of times, and then they send it out to me, and I'm like, I have to actively sit there and junk those friggin' channels that I like in order to keep them from putting shit in front of my face I don't want to see right now. Got news for you. It's not working on the Bitcoin maxis. You can't AI algorithm them into selling their fucking Bitcoin. You're not manufacturing that consent, motherfucker. Like, it's not that tough. All right. Brent crude. But, there aren't diamond hands in the oil market for a variety of reasons, because oil is not money. It's not even it's only barely a good proxy for money. So as of right now, nothing. This is not going to change until after the election. This is what's going on in oil. This volatility in oil is horseshit. It's complete horseshit. Or is it bullshit? Or is it sheep shit? Or is it pig shit? Or is it just shit? I don't know. It's just terrible. It's all bad. So don't get upset that oil's not moving. I don't like Warren Buffett very much, but be like Warren. If oil drops $3 and your favorite oil stock drops a couple of percent, maybe you should buy some. Because it's not like they're not going to make money. And here's the thing. The question you should be asking yourself is whether you should be buying oil stocks at these prices or whether you should put your capital somewhere else. The only other thing you should be thinking that in terms of that capital going to something else is something that's going to prep you for a post-oil landscape. So do you have enough ammo? Do you have enough tins of sardines? Like, that's otherwise, if you're thinking in 1 to 2 sigma events from, conditions as to where we are now, Bob's your uncle. Oh, Jesus. Oil should be trading at $100 a barrel. Doomberg's wrong. I'm sorry. I like Doomberg. I think he's an honest broker. I just think he's wrong. Like, sovereign debt crisis, currency collapse. Where do you think commodity prices are going to go? It's not going to be a function of the cost to pull the shit out of the ground in, I don't know, pick a term. The only price of oil that matters right now, really, is the number of barrels of oil you can buy with an ounce of gold. When that number gets overstretched, oil is undervalued, and right now it's pretty overstretched to the downside. So, that's what I would say. Though I probably should have that chart for you. Maybe I'll post it as an addendum to the market report. We'll see where it is, and with a little bit of commentary. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Perfidious Albion in London. I present this as an addendum to a lot of what Alex is talking about in the Vanessa Beeley and soon to be the GG&G podcast, and then my commentary on it as well. I want to go back over some of this stuff. So this is the UK 10-year versus US 10-year, the spread between them, right? So let's make life really simple. Up is bad for the UK, down is good, right? The more that the UK gilts traded a lower yield, this is basis points, yield and basis points, okay? So, for example, the zero line is where they're both trading at the exact same interest rate. Down here, UK gilts are trading at 50 basis points or 0.5% lower than American. So if the The US 10-year is at 4%. UK gilts are at 3.5%. And the exact opposite is here. 4.5% for the UK, 4% for the US. When that spread gets out of whack, something has to happen. So let's talk. Let's go back to the coup versus the Liz's. Liz Truss, Queen Elizabeth, and BlackRock versus the BOE. The British pound breaks down below $1.05, and Brit and UK gilt market goes bidless, as Alex notes in his commentary. Right? Right after that, the BOJ widens the 10-year JGB band, allowing for some liquidity, some 10-year liquidity to come back into the market. Dropping, and this is resolved. We get a new now Kuroda is still in charge of the BOE at this point. But the BOJ does this while the coup is taking place in the UK. Charles is put in place. Rishi Sunak takes over, yada, yada, yada. Moving forward, once it gets out of control to the downside, the Fed turns around and says, look, we're not pivoting. Screw you, and we're creating the Bank Term Funding Program. We're bailing out Credit Suisse here. We're not pivoting. We're taking care. We are in control of the situation. You cannot blackmail us and push U.S. yields down. We're going higher. And Powell raises interest rates in the middle of a banking crisis, put pressure on the UK gilts again until Yellen has to go to China. The NATO summit occurs at that point, backing off of World War III. The U.S. debt ceiling crisis is resolved, and the gilt market calms down again. We get back to the negative 50 level. The BOJ raises interest rates off of the negative bound, and the SMB cuts because we're starting to get back towards zero. Boom. We get back to negative 50. ECB, the SMB cuts again, or the SMB cuts a couple of times, then starts holding. Now the ECB cuts, and more MOPE begins. And what I mean by MOPE is management perspective. We also have Yellen starting here, pressuring U.S. yields down. And that's part of this is actually should be reset to Yellen starts Treasury QE. And it's still not good for the UK. And now we have the yen carry trade blow up here. And Powell finally saying, okay, I might have to pivot. Or I might have to, start lowering rates. Who's he trying to save? I don't know. Because by my read, he was against this previously. So I'm not sure where he is now. Or, again, does the BOJ have another ace, another hand to play? Alex's argument is that the UK is functionally bankrupt. But they are. And they're beyond functionally bankrupt. They're to hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars on the backs of the taxpayers. And that this is a UK solvency crisis that's been visited upon them by the United States, Japan, the EU, and their own dumb fucking policy. But everybody thought they were going to be able to attack Russia and bring her down by now. It's why they gave Ukraine a 2-year moratorium, in Alex's argument, to begin debt repayment. A 2-year moratorium on servicing the debt. Now they're at a point where that 2 years is up, and now the bondholders are screaming. And that's why the aid packages are so desperately needed. That's why this, that's why this, that's why all of these things are happening. And that's why the Kursk invasion as well. We have to try and prove to the bondholders that Ukraine has a chance to force a settlement. It's a desperation move in every way. But it's also precluding peace because they need to have a war that Donald Trump can't get out of. There's so many things bound up in this, but it's all comes down to, at this point, the UK gilt market is getting ready to collapse. And I think this spread is the important part of it. And let's watch to see if this continues to push towards 50 basis points. Right? Let's see if UK gilts underperform US treasuries. You know, it's like a rock and a hard place. Yes, you can get the overall numbers down. So everybody's bond yields are now low. Everybody's bonds are overpriced. But at some point, that's going to end. And then the market is going to demand that yields go higher because something is going to break. But right now, that's why all of this is happening. That's why the Bank of England is now talking about opening up a full-blown junk repo market for junk bonds. And every, piece of shit asset that's out there, including Ukrainian bonds, which are now in technical default, to pay bondholders off and then throw it onto the backs of the people, which is what they're going to do. It's not just evil. Like, these people are not just evil, okay? And now the question is, what's the Fed's role in all this? Well, the Fed's job here is to keep interest rates as high as possible for as long as possible. So what if Powell disappoints markets in 3 weeks and only goes 25 basis points? I don't care. I mean, at this point, these things are bigger than whether or not there are small businesses going bankrupt in the United States. Again, I go back to my commentary the other day, the difference between me and Danielle Booth. And again, this is not a criticism of Danielle. I have nothing but the utmost respect for her and her humanity, because that's what's driving a lot of her commentary. But she's also trying to tell everybody that, look, the Fed's probably already made the decision to go 50 basis points. But if market conditions deteriorate here, how about this? What if by September 15th, by the FOMC meeting, UK gilts are at plus 60 basis points to the US? Does Powell cut by 50 or 25? If it's 0, he cuts 25 because he's trying to push it higher. By pushing it higher, he's forcing the Bank of England to buy U.S. Treasuries. And the ECB to buy U.S. Treasuries. And to force onto their balance sheet overpriced Treasuries. Now, and again, undermining Janet Yellen doing Treasury QE. I don't know. Like, this is a very high stakes game of poker, and one I don't want to be sitting at the table at. I can barely hold my own at the 2-4 table against the semi-pros trying to make their friggin' mortgage payments at the Flamingo in Vegas. But I can tell you that this game is being played. This is the 2 billion, 4 billion limit table. That's not even a limit. This is a $50 billion buy-in, no limit table at the Bellagio. Okay? That's what this game is. So again, I don't know that I even have the full picture in my head here. Like, this is all popping into my head as, the last 24 hours. I've had a chance to think about this a little bit, but there's something sincere going on here. This is I think the UK gilt market is as much the key as the German market is. And oh, by the way, German yield spreads continue to contract. Oh, look, this morning we have a divergence, big divergence this morning. The 2-year is down below 1.5%, and the 10-year is back above 1.58. So again, the 10-year market is the one that's the canary in the coal mine. And the 2-10 spread in the United States is 3 basis points this morning. It's 3, down from 130. Yeah, they had to push the 10-year yield down 100 basis points to get there. And all that's doing is extending the mess that is in Europe and the UK. SOFR futures curve hasn't moved in days. It's not going to move until we are closer to the FOMC meeting, if it moves at all. The euro has fallen off this morning. Far more than the yen has devalued. The U.S. dollar index has improved slightly. The pound is way overvalued given this situation. So the ruble is flat. Japanese 10 years at 0.9%. I probably should start looking at those credit spreads. Copper's $4.24 a pound, telling everybody that the oil market is completely crazy, and gasoline futures are trending towards $2 a gallon because Queen Kamala has to be. We're still 70 days out from the election, so Queen Kamala, we need to get gasoline prices down as far as possible in order to get people to go on the day. Go, you know what? Biden and company weren't so bad. Gas is only $3 a gallon. These divergences. This is almost a 10 basis point divergence between the 2 and the 10. And what happens whenever the 10 is trading significantly above the 2? The 10 collapses towards the 2 every time. Okay? So this is going to continue, and this is starting to accelerate to the downside. This is not a simple channel. We're starting to get an acceleration to the downside. So now the question is, are we going to get a breakout here? This is a kind of a breakout this morning. Back towards 50 basis points. The Dow. Dow was up slightly, just like gold and silver. All the safe haven assets have had the kibosh put on them. They're like, nope, you're not moving. We have bigger problems. And maybe this is all just drive-by shooting of maybe they're just all, drive-by shooting passersby, right? That the real fight is in the bond market and everything else is just, it is what it is. Again, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I'm trying to balance my commentary this morning. So someone is blowing up. Someone else is trying desperately to hold on to it. And again, if Powell goes 50 basis points next month, it may be because there's a big U.S. bank that's on the hook for whatever's going to happen in England. And Powell may have to cut significantly in order to, provide the liquidity necessary. But if all he has to do is cut by 50 basis points while the Bank of England is, repoing friggin' Turkish 30-year bonds as collateral for Like whatever the hell they've got out there, like literally going to open up the entire all of this toxic sludge of the financial system is going to wind up on the Bank of England's balance sheet. It ain't the Fed offering that up. It ain't the Fed's treasury market that's about to go bidless. It's the UK's. It's the Bank of England's. And if the Bank of England goes bidless, do you think the Bundesbank is very far behind? Do you think the Bank of France is very far behind? Why do you think Macron doesn't want to leave power? I mean, there were some arguments made on our Slack server as though, Macron is acting prudently here. I mean, just as to play devil's advocate. And that's, this was the patron's argument. Because, if you let these crazy lefties take power, they're going to destroy the French budget and blah, 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 blah. And there's not going to be a minority government that anybody will be willing to, really back. And it'll force real political unrest at a time when they can't afford to have that happen. Maybe, I mean, Macron may be saying the exact right words, even though we know why he's doing it, which is another freaking reason completely. I don't know. But I do know that the Dow so far this month has vastly outperformed everything else. And what if NVIDIA misses on earnings today? As they should, because they've literally been booking revenue that they've been loaning to their counterparts. Right? To their customers. They've been literally loaning chips to holding the mortgage, holding the loan on the chips that they've sold and then booking that as revenue. To all these companies that are the equivalent, the AI equivalent of pets.com. I saw this coming a year ago. I never really talked about it very much, but you'll notice that I never put NVIDIA in the portfolio. Aside from the fact that I just fucking hate the company because I always thought that the CEO was a scumbag. And I would never, I've told this story before. I haven't told it in years, but I remember about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I was talking about, I noted a technical breakout in Microsoft after a big base. And I was chatting with Dexter about it. And I said, dude, Microsoft may be a really good buy here. And he's like, I'm never putting $1 into that company as long as Steve Ballmer is the CEO. He's and that's at that point when that conversation is what, if you heard me say in the past, I've said this in the past many times, that I consider Steve Ballmer to be the worst CEO in the history of man. No CEO has overseen more market cap destruction while having a dominant position in the marketplace than Steve Ballmer. And Ballmer didn't destroy Microsoft versus Apple because he was told to destroy Microsoft. He just destroyed Microsoft because he was an idiot. I will never invest or recommend or buy an NVIDIA product as long as that fucking asshole is running the company. Can't pronounce his name and I don't care. I just know he's a scumbag. I've always known he's a scumbag. I would have never bought into Intel when Brian Krasnich was running the company 10 years ago, and clearly their chips were inferior to what was coming out. I could see all of that then. And I have, and to this, and don't ask me about where I think the chip market is today, because I don't really keep up with it, other than to say that I think Apple has a comparative advantage over everybody else, and I think AMD, going fabless under Lisa Su, has a tremendous advantage. But I don't know whether they're, I don't know whether you should, buy AMD, based on where they are in the marketplace. I don't know. I mean, I like AMD. I should have bought them at $2 a share when I identified them, back in 2017. I had the opportunity to buy a lot of AMD at $2 a share, and I didn't do it. If I did, then we might not be here right now. And yeah, I was willing to go Texas hedge on AMD, and I don't know why I didn't pull the trigger. Texas hedge meaning double long, meaning not only do I own the underlying, I was going to buy calls. I was going to buy out of the money calls on the thing as well and double up. And I didn't do it, and I should have. But that being said, like I don't regret any of these things. I don't regret the Bitcoins that I lost at Mt. Gox. I don't regret not buying AMD. I bring them up just as moments in time when you think, oh wow, how much different would your life be? But I don't know that it would be better. I think is the point I'm trying to make. Because I love what I do now. I mean, I really do. And if life had been easier, would I be here today? That's a good question. All right. So back to the Dow, back to NVIDIA, back to all this stuff. Like the Dow is outperforming in August by a lot because it's a safe haven trade, just like gold, just like silver, to a lesser extent, just like Bitcoin, to a lesser extent, just like treasuries, right? But if NVIDIA rolls over today, if NVIDIA's, revenue generation engine blows up today, because that's all it's going to take, then what? Would that be the harbinger of the great rotation? I mean, the NASDAQ chart is pretty clear that we've already had that. And again, this is another one of those moments where I say to myself, make note for the Sunday market report, put up the monthly chart of the NASDAQ, which I should do for next time. I may even have to, God, I know the patron request list is huge, so I hate to bump any of that for the Sunday market report. Maybe I'll have to do a thing for Friday. I don't have much on my schedule for Friday, so maybe I'll do a thing on Friday, and we'll look at some things coming into the close. Maybe that's a good idea. Okay, I'll do that. That's how we'll do this week. So look for a post from me on Friday, an intra-market report post from me on Friday, either one of these or something else. I don't know. We'll see. But that's where we are. Like, this is a big, powerful move by the Dow relative to everything else. So now let's see how we come into the end of September. Do we get a similar outperformance by the Dow in September? We're going to close this week. We could close this week at an all-time high, above the previous all-time high. The Dow is setting up for a big move to 45 grand. But by the same token, so far this week, it hasn't moved very much. So we'll see. It was up 50 when I hit record. So add another 50 points, but it's not a lot. All right, that's what I got for you this morning, guys. You guys be well. You take care. I will have links to everything. The Mises Institute, the Alex Grander podcast with Vanessa Beeley, and then look for the GG&G podcast later in the day. Again, for those of you who don't know this, if you don't realize this, I have a public podcast. So on any podcast platform you like, your choice, Apple, Spotify, whatever, there's 100 and soon to be 90 episodes of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. So you might want to check those out. I think the one that we did with Vince Lanci and Eric Jung the other day was exemplary. I don't usually, what's the word I'm looking for? Review my own work or toot my own horn like that. I leave that up to you. But that one was good. As the kids would say, that one was fire. All right. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep a stick on the ice.